data shows a slight decrease in the number of people experiencing homelessness this year compared to last, with an increase in people taking indoor shelter spaces. But those numbers are considered an undercount.
If you want to see the fastest way a life can disappear in America, don't look at the crime shows. Don't look at the movies. Look at the places where the sun is so bright it makes everything look clean from far away. Look at Arizona, because in Arizona, the crisis doesn't announce itself with sirens. It builds quietly in the shadows of growth. It hides behind sound walls and freeway ramps. It lives under bridges that tourists drive over without noticing. It spreads along riverbanks and vacant lots where a tent can feel like the last remaining option. And the most disturbing part is not the tents themselves. It's how normal it has started to feel. A few years ago, many people would have called it unthinkable to have entire blocks where hundreds of human beings sleep outside, exposed to heat that can overwhelm the body, and nights where fear becomes a routine. Now, people call it just how it is. They call it a nuisance. They call it a cleanup problem. But homelessness is not a mess on the sidewalk. It is a humanitarian emergency unfolding in real time.
Just moved to a different location. The problem just shifted out of the neighborhood. What do you say to those claims?
Well, I definitely think that over the last decade, we have seen a huge increase in the number of people experiencing homelessness in our community. So what they're seeing and feeling is true. We are seeing more people experiencing homelessness. Not everyone took us up on that offer. 82% did, but this was a nice alternative.
And behind every single tarp, every cardboard wall, every sleeping bag tucked behind a shopping center, there's a story that used to look like yours. A job, a family, a plan, a normal morning, a normal routine, and then one event, or a slow chain of events, that pushed someone over an edge that most of us don't realize we are standing near. This is Homeless US News, where we bring you the stories that so often remain unheard. We report with dignity. We do not exploit people's pain. We do not sensationalize. We do not describe anything graphic. We focus on what is happening, why it is happening, and what it will take to stop it. Today, we are exposing the harsh reality behind Arizona's homelessness crisis. Why it is growing so quickly, who is being hit the hardest, what is being done, and what is still missing. Because if we keep treating this like background noise, the next tent you pass could belong to someone you know, and you might not even see it until it's too late.
That structured campground, the city's safe outdoor space, it's been operational for a year now, and we were the first media to go inside. Tomorrow, I'll give you a closer look at the operation and why people are still concerned about shelter space in Phoenix. Erica Stapleton, 12 News.
Part 1. The desert does not care about your income. Arizona is beautiful. It is also unforgiving. When people picture homelessness, they often imagine cold cities, rain, and winter nights. But in Arizona, the danger comes dressed as sunlight. The same weather that draws people to Phoenix and Tucson can become a threat. When you have no door to close and no air conditioner to hide behind. When you live outside here, the day starts early. Not because you want it to, but because the heat wakes you up. Inside a tent, the air can turn heavy and trapped. Shade becomes a strategy. Water becomes the center of your schedule. You measure distances in minutes, because 10 minutes in direct sun can feel like an hour when you're dehydrated. And the desert adds pressure to every decision. Do you walk to a clinic and risk collapsing on the way back? Do you leave your tent to look for work and risk losing the few things you own? Do you stand in line for a meal and miss the chance to find a safer place to sleep before dark? These decisions don't feel dramatic when you hear them from a distance, but on the ground, they control a person's entire life. When you are unhoused, your time is not yours. Your mind is not free. Your body is constantly negotiating with danger. And the cruelty of it is simple. If you have a home, heat is an inconvenience. If you don't, heat becomes a system of punishment. People talk about homelessness like it's one problem, one label, one category. But homelessness is actually a pile of problems that multiply each other. Without stable housing, a minor medical issue can turn into a crisis. A cut can become infected. A toothache can become unbearable. A chronic condition can spiral without medication. And mental health struggles become louder when your nervous system never gets to rest. Then there is hygiene. Restrooms are not guaranteed. Showers are not guaranteed. A clean place to wash a wound is not guaranteed. Even something as simple as staying hydrated becomes a daily fight when water is limited. Fountains are turned off, or you're afraid to leave your belongings unattended. And in Arizona, the weather doesn't pause for your paperwork. It doesn't pause for your court date. It doesn't pause for your job interview. It doesn't pause for your grief, your anxiety, your trauma, your exhaustion. This is the environment where a growing number of Arizonans are trying to survive. And survival changes people. It makes them guarded. It makes them reactive. It makes them look difficult to systems that require calm behavior, perfect attendance, and polite patience. It makes it harder to trust outreach workers because so many interactions in public spaces are built around being moved, being watched, being told to disappear. That is where the story begins in Arizona, not with a tent, with an environment that turns instability into a trap. Part 2, Phoenix, the crisis you can drive past without seeing. Phoenix is a city of growth. It expands outward like it's always chasing the horizon. New construction, new businesses, new neighborhoods. On paper, it looks like opportunity, but in the middle of that expansion, the number of people living outside has risen sharply in recent years, and the visibility of encampments has changed the way entire communities talk about poverty. For a long time, one area of Phoenix became a symbol of that reality, a concentrated zone of tents and makeshift shelters that people described in extreme terms, some calling it Thunderdome, others calling it the Danger Zone. The name depended on who was speaking, but the meaning was clear, a place where hundreds of human beings tried to survive outside, in the open, in the shadow of downtown prosperity. When poverty becomes concentrated like that, the city reacts. Businesses complain, residents demand action, politicians promise enforcement, headlines focus on trash and disorder, and the people living there become a public debate instead of human beings. Eventually, those large visible camps get cleared, pushed out, scattered. And here's the truth that rarely makes it into the speeches. A sweep does not end homelessness. It relocates it. It pushes it behind different walls, under different bridges, into different lots. It turns one visible crisis into many smaller invisible crises, each one harder to track, harder to serve, and often more dangerous for the people living in it. When you clear an encampment, you don't just remove tents. You disrupt survival routines. You break fragile connections to outreach workers. You scatter communities that were protecting each other. You increase the risk that someone loses their ID, their medication, their phone, their only documents, their last proof that they exist in the system. People watching from a distance may say, "Good, now it's clean." But clean is not the same as solved. Clean is not the same as housed. Clean is not the same as safe. And as Phoenix grows, the crisis does not shrink just because it's moved. It spreads outward. It touches places that didn't used to see it. It shows up in areas of wealth that assumed it could never happen there. It shows up in cities like Scottsdale, where high property values create the illusion of immunity, until rising costs push more people out of stable housing and into cars, motels, couches, and eventually the street. This is how a crisis expands, not all at once, but steadily, quietly, until one day, people look up and realize they are surrounded by human suffering they learn to ignore. And that brings us to the stories inside the statistics. Because numbers can't tell you what it feels like to sleep in fear. Numbers can't tell you what it costs to keep hope alive. Part 3, Ricky, Life Inside the Danger Zone. Ricky is a name we're using to protect privacy, but the life we're about to describe is not rare. It is common enough to be a pattern. Ricky lives in a tent in Phoenix. In the morning, the sun hits early. By midday, the heat presses down like weight. He has no electricity, no refrigerator, no reliable access to clean water, no safe storage. His days are built around basics that most people never have to plan. Food, drinking water, a place to wash his hands, a place to charge his phone, a way to avoid heat illness, a way to stay safe. Without restrooms and sanitation, the environment around encampments can become unsanitary fast. Trash piles up because there are not enough bins or pickups. People get sick because a small wound can become infected when you can't keep it clean. Rats and insects become part of the landscape, and every day feels like a battle against conditions that would be unacceptable anywhere else. At night, Ricky tries to sleep under thin tarps, but sleep outside is not real sleep. It's a light, fragmented rest where you keep listening. You listen for footsteps. You listen for arguing. You listen for someone testing the edge of your tent, because the street is not just uncomfortable, it is dangerous. And yet, Ricky still holds on to hope. He dreams of stable housing, a room with a door that locks, a bed where he can finally sleep deeply, a shower where he can wash away days of dust and sweat and stress, a place to keep his documents safe, a place where he can apply for work without worrying that his phone will die before the application finishes loading. He dreams of a car, not as a luxury, but as a step toward normal life. Transportation is often the difference between maybe and never. And more than anything, Ricky dreams of seeing his son again, not through a screen, not through a painful phone call, but in person, in a place where he can say, "You can come here. You're safe." Ricky used to work as a mechanic. He had a job. He had a routine. He had a role. He had pride in being useful. Then came the kind of disaster that destroys people quietly in America: an injury and a financial fall, a broken leg, lost wages, medical bills that arrive faster than paychecks, late fees stacking up, rent due again before the last month's debt is even touched, a family strained to the breaking point, a safety net that feels like it's made of paper. Ricky says he didn't want to be there, but when the bills came, he felt like he had no choice. That is how homelessness often happens, not with one dramatic moment, but with a slow squeeze. And once you fall into homelessness, the climb out is not a simple ladder. It is a maze. Employers want reliability. They want an address. They want consistent hygiene. They want you to show up on time every day. But how do you show up consistently when your life is unstable by design? Services exist, but they can come with barriers, waitlists, appointment requirements, paperwork, curfews that conflict with jobs, rules that separate couples, restrictions that force people to choose between shelter and the one companion that keeps them alive, like a pet. And if you miss one appointment because you were sick, because you couldn't find transportation, because your phone died, because the bus didn't show, because you had to move your tent, you can be pushed back weeks. Ricky's sentence is simple: "I'm not giving up. I just need a chance." But what he's really saying is this: I need a system that doesn't punish me for being unstable, when instability is exactly what homelessness creates. Because the street doesn't just take your home, it takes your time, it takes your energy, it takes your ability to plan, it takes your ability to feel calm, and it can take your identity, too, until you start believing the world's worst assumptions about you. Ricky is still fighting those assumptions, and that fight is exhausting. Part 4. Laura, the fear that never turns off. Laura is also a protected name. Her story reflects what many outreach workers hear again and again, especially from women living outside. Laura is in Tucson. When night comes, her body does not relax. It tightens. Because on the street, nighttime can feel like a test you didn't sign up for. She says she can't sleep peacefully. Not because she's dramatic, not because she's fragile, but because she's learned what happens when you let your guard down. She fears being robbed. She fears being attacked. She fears losing the few possessions that still give her some sense of control. Even a backpack can contain your entire life. A jacket can be the difference between comfort and misery. A phone can be your only link to help. For Laura, survival is not just hunger and heat. It is vigilance. It is scanning faces. It is avoiding isolated areas. It is learning which public spaces are less hostile and which ones are hunted by enforcement. It is knowing where to stand so you can see who is coming. It is learning to appear invisible while also trying not to look like a target. And when you live like that, you change. Your nervous system stays on alert. Your emotions flatten out. Hope becomes harder to hold. Trust becomes risky. Laura used to work as a nurse. She had stability. She had responsibilities. She had a place in the world where people recognized her value. Then her husband died. Grief can be like an ocean, and when you're swimming alone, it can pull you under. Laura says depression took over her life. It made functioning feel impossible. It made work feel like walking through cement. It made simple tasks feel heavy. And as her mental health collapsed, her stability collapsed with it. People on the outside often say, "Why didn't she get help?" But help is not always available quickly, and it's not always affordable. Mental health services can be underfunded, overloaded, and difficult to access. And when you are grieving, when you are barely sleeping, when you are losing your ability to function, your capacity to navigate complicated systems shrinks, then the eviction notice comes. And suddenly you don't just lose a home, you lose your anchor, you lose your sense of identity, you lose the place where healing could have happened. And when you become homeless, the world can get colder fast, not because the people around you are evil, but because many people don't know how to face suffering without feeling threatened by it. Family relationships can fracture, friends can pull away. Some loved ones assume homelessness is a choice, because believing that feels safer than admitting it could happen to anyone. Laura says she called a relative, hoping for a lifeline, and heard words that haunt people for years. You made your choices, but homelessness is often a story of choices where every option is bad. Do I pay rent or do I buy medication? Do I keep my car running or do I buy groceries? Do I leave a violent situation or do I stay and risk my life? Do I take a job that doesn't pay enough or do I lose the job and risk eviction? These are not clean, heroic choices. They are survival choices. And when people are forced into homelessness, isolation becomes a silent killer. Without community, recovery becomes harder. Without trust, support becomes harder. Without connection, a person's mental health can spiral. Laura's story reveals something America avoids talking about. When someone loses housing, they don't just lose a roof. They lose the normal routines that keep a person stable. They lose privacy. They lose dignity. They lose the ability to rest. And once rest is gone, everything else becomes harder. So when we talk about homelessness, we have to stop speaking like the solution is just try harder. Because try harder is not a policy. It's a way of looking away. Part 5. The real root causes when housing becomes a luxury. To understand why Arizona's homelessness crisis keeps growing, we have to talk about the pressure building underneath it. Housing costs have risen, and wages have not kept pace for many workers. For families on the edge, a rent increase can be a disaster. When you're already spending most of your income on housing, there is no room for a car repair, a medical bill, or a sudden cut in hours. Then you add population growth. Arizona has drawn people for jobs, climate, and opportunity. But when demand rises faster than supply, prices go up. And when prices go up, the bottom of the housing market disappears first. Affordable units turn into higher-priced units. Older apartments get renovated and relisted at rates that push long-term residents out. Motels that used to function as last resort shelter get redeveloped. And what was once barely affordable becomes impossible. This is not just economics, it is displacement. And displacement is one of the fastest routes into homelessness. Then there are zoning and development rules that make it harder to build the kind of housing that low-income people can afford. When cities restrict density, block multifamily housing, or make buildings slow and expensive, the result is predictable: fewer units, higher rents, more people falling off the edge. Now at healthcare, medical debt and health crises can destroy stability quickly. A single injury can remove someone from work. A chronic illness can drain savings. A mental health crisis can disrupt employment. And in America, where healthcare costs can be overwhelming, it doesn't take long for a stable life to become unstable. Now at domestic violence, many people, especially women, become homeless because they flee unsafe homes. The choice can be brutal: stay and risk harm, or leave and risk homelessness. When shelter systems and housing options are limited, survivors can end up sleeping in cars, couch surfing, or living outside. Now at mental health, when services are underfunded or fragmented, people fall through gaps. And when people fall, they don't land in a soft place. They land on sidewalks. Now add substance use. This is where many conversations become judgmental and simplistic. But reality is more complex. Some people develop substance use issues before homelessness. Some develop them after. Many people use substances as a coping mechanism for trauma, pain, and stress. And living outside can intensify every one of those triggers. The key point is this: substance use does not explain the entire homelessness crisis. And homelessness cannot be solved by treating substance use alone, because the foundation for stability is housing. Without housing, recovery becomes harder. Without housing, mental health becomes harder. Without housing, employment becomes harder. Without housing, everything becomes harder. And then there is the criminalization of poverty. In many places, actions tied to homelessness, sleeping outside, camping, loitering, panhandling are treated as violations. People receive tickets they can't pay. They receive fines that grow. They end up with warrants. They get arrested for minor infractions that are really symptoms of being unhoused. This creates a pipeline where poverty becomes a legal problem, and a legal problem becomes another barrier to housing and jobs. It is the ultimate trap. Punish someone for being homeless, then ask why they can't escape homelessness. And while all of this is happening, political incentives often push leaders towards short-term visible fixes, clearing camps, moving people along, building temporary solutions that look good on camera. But homelessness is not solved by optics. It is solved by capacity, housing capacity, service capacity, prevention capacity. And right now, in too many parts of Arizona, the system does not have enough capacity to match the scale of the crisis. So the crisis grows, and the public grows numb. Part 6, the cost of inaction and the solutions that actually work. When a society fails to address homelessness, the damage spreads in every direction. First, it destroys health. Living outside increases the risk of infection, untreated chronic illness, and mental health decline. Without consistent medical care, manageable conditions become emergencies. Without stable sleep, the body weakens. Without hygiene resources, small issues escalate, and extreme heat makes all of it worse. Second, it increases danger. People living outside face higher risks of theft, assault, exploitation, and trauma. Even when the public doesn't see it, fear becomes part of daily life. People develop survival behaviors that can look aggressive from the outside, when they are actually the result of constant threat. Third, it strains communities. Emergency rooms become the default healthcare system for people who can't access regular care. Police become the default responders to mental health crises. Cleanups become expensive, repetitive, and ineffective when there is nowhere stable for people to go. Businesses and residents feel frustrated, and that frustration often turns into hostility, making solutions harder to implement. Fourth, it drains public money in the least effective ways. Reactive spending, emergency services, hospital visits, enforcement. Repeated cleanups costs more than stable housing and prevention. The irony is painful. We often spend more money managing homelessness than it would cost to reduce it. So what works? The solutions are not mysterious. They are difficult but clear. Stable, affordable housing is the foundation. Not only emergency shelter, but real pathways to permanent housing. Housing that is priced for low-income workers, seniors, and people on fixed incomes. Housing that is supported by policies that preserve affordability, prevent displacement, and expand supply. Supportive services must be accessible and consistent. That includes mental health care, primary health care, and case management that doesn't collapse when someone misses an appointment. It includes job training and employment support that understands the barriers unhoused people face. It includes help replacing IDs, securing documents, and navigating benefits. Shelter options must be safer and more flexible. Many people avoid shelters because of trauma, safety concerns, restrictions, or because they can't bring a partner, a pet, or their belongings. Low-barrier shelter models, safe parking programs, and transitional communities can reduce harm while people wait for housing placement. Prevention must become a priority. rental assistance, eviction prevention, mediation, and emergency support for people facing sudden crises can stop homelessness before it starts. Because the best way to reduce homelessness is to keep people housed in the first place. And in Arizona specifically, heat safety must be treated as life-saving infrastructure. Cooling centers, water distribution, shade access, transportation, and outreach during extreme heat are not optional. They are emergency prevention. Finally, we need honest measurement. Not how many tents did we remove, but how many people did we house. Not how many sweeps did we do, but how many lives became stable. Not how quickly did we clear a block, but how many people stayed housed 6 months later. When the metrics change, the strategy changes. And when the strategy changes, the crisis can begin to shrink not because people disappeared, but because they were supported back into stability. Because here's the truth that every city must face. Homelessness is not a character flaw. It is what happens when the cost of survival outruns the systems meant to protect human beings. And if a community decides that some people are allowed to fall forever, the fall will eventually reach further than anyone expects. Outro. If you felt uncomfortable, don't look away. If this story made you uncomfortable, that discomfort matters. Because discomfort is what happens when a human being recognizes another human being's suffering and realizes it is not inevitable. It is built, it is tolerated, it is normalized, and normalization is the most dangerous part. When tents become scenery, we stop asking questions. When suffering becomes background, we stop demanding solutions. When we stop demanding solutions, the crisis grows and more people like Ricky and Laura become invisible, even while they are living in plain sight. So here is what we are asking you to do. Not to pity people, not to perform compassion for a moment and then scroll away. We are asking you to stay human. Talk about this issue without dehumanizing language. Challenge the idea that homelessness is a choice. Learn what organizations in your area are doing that actually moves people into housing and keeps them there. Support them if you can through volunteering, donating, or simply sharing their work. Ask local leaders what the long-term plan is for affordable housing, mental health services, and prevention. Demand numbers that reflect outcomes, not appearances. And if you see someone living outside, remember this: you are not looking at a problem. You are looking at a person whose life became unstable in a country where stability is more fragile than we admit. A person who deserves safety. A person who deserves dignity. A person who deserves a real chance. This is Homeless US News. If you want us to cover another city or state, write it in the comments. Share this video so the truth doesn't stay hidden behind highways and headlines. Subscribe if you want more reporting that centers people, not stereotypes. Because change starts when we stop pretending we didn't see. And the moment you truly see someone, you can't unsee them. That is where responsibility begins.